I went to the corner, my friends, they weren't there. They said, hey man, you want your share? I turned around and walked away. I didn't want to live nowhere. Street corners with the finest of youth.
Hey there. Another one of my talks. It all seems to be interrelated because, my movie making is interrelated with my personality, is interrelated with this eternal cocoon, which is interrelated with, what I see on television, what is ostensibly the culture in America. I know a lot of people act like television is the culture, and it's pretty much everybody on it's lying. Professional liars going out and putting out stories that aren't true for all of us to get involved in and pay them to tell us stories that aren't true. But I don't think it's quite that cynical because I think a lot of the writers, for lack of a better word are working out their issues, totally convinced that what they're having to say is brand new and real. They just put it in different formats. And yet at the same time, they're not. You're always hearing about reality shows where the producers compel the people who are on there that they're paying to be on the show to act in ways they didn't really actually want to act. Not really real. Or they'll re-edit the whole thing and put it out so it has, more impact, and then we get worried about them. There's people might starve on an island. There's 6 people on an island. They might not get off. Somebody might starve. Oh, never mind the crew of 100 people sitting off to the sides and the catering tables and all that stuff. Not really real. But that whole thing where they know we're all craving to have some kind of something. Each TV show is so totally different. I haven't watched television in like 10 years. I watched Game of Thrones at a friend of mine's house, but I was mostly interested in seeing how they were going to construct the story. And it was entertaining. But a lot of like these dramas, I think the writers are actually working out their own personal issues and making up stories, and then there's a bunch of us with the same issues watching it and going, oh, it's so true, what are they going to do? But it's also all just basically designing, sorry, there's an itch on my neck, don't mean to be destructive. So they're also trying to sell ads. Or, if you're on one of these pay-per-view channels, you paid your monthly fee. We want to sit there and give you something to like get all involved in. And, we do it. And it all kind of comes in from hooks from when we were 5, 6, 12, 14. Very, that whole drama, the whole world's about me sort of time of life. And then you get older as an adult and you're like, oh, I've overcome that. I'm now doing this. Except when you listen to people, they actually are doing something very similar to what they were doing when they were kids. You just think you've come up with an understanding that explains it, and you're over that. I had the great explanation. My whole thing with my altering was pretty real to me until suddenly it wasn't. And it's, this is something that's kind of, I don't know if this is going to make a whole lot of sense. But, I was getting all wired and upset about this friend of mine who I assigned the job of being the person who would love me, and she didn't want to. And I was like all in a tither about this, and I was at home. I quit, kicked her out of my life. And glad this biatch was gone. And then I sat around and cried at home, and I couldn't figure out why. And my boss said, well, it was easy. You love her. What good is it to be right in all your judgments and lose the ones you love? I thought that was a pretty good point, because it's like I had invented this whole story that she's supposed to operate in, and she wasn't doing it. Was I really upset at her, or was I upset she wasn't playing her part in the story the way I demanded it be done? Not really sure. But, and I think I talked about this, but there's like, I had this thing called the pillar of intent. While I was crying, one day I was sitting there, laying there, I was actually on the floor, and it was like I flashed, and there was this large, black, obsidian, shiny, craggy pillar. Not smooth and cylindrical, but kind of like a gnarly tree branch sort of thing made out of charcoal, if that makes any sense. And it was in an area of amber. It wasn't like hard amber. I was sort of in the middle of this amber staring at this pillar. Now, what the hell is an area of amber? What the hell is a pillar of intent? But I'm looking at it and I'm realizing all this stuff that's going on, and it's kind of silly and everything. And finally, this little voice in my head went, this is stupid. And the whole pillar just shattered, and it swirled around, and then it reformed into another shape over there, wherever over there is in an area of amber. Thing is, this was like far realer than my normal day-to-day perception. This was like real, intense, internal adjustment had happened. And it was like my pillar of intent that dictated my life shattered and fell apart and rebuilt as something else. Not entirely clear what that is. Don't know that anybody else is going to experience that way. I'm not going to sit here and say everybody must find their pillar of intent and have it shattered. It's just how it occurred for me. And I realized, though, that my writing for my movies changed. Like all this stuff that was really vastly important to me, and I had to make a point of it, and the emotional impact. And, I would try and write the story to control how you, the viewer, were watching it and have a particular impact at this particular point, because that's what the story demanded, and also kind of demanded to get people to be upset to watch, to get advertising and blah, 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 blah. So I think what a lot of writers are doing is they're operating out of their own personal pillar of intent. The pillar of intent is like the thing behind the cocoon. There's the intent of the cocoon. You have an intent of how you're going to perceive the world, and there's like this dark enemy force that's trying to do something, and you're trying to corral it and run it and become the hero that overthrows it, or you become the slave that's undermined by it and it becomes your master. But the intent is always the intent, and it doesn't change. Hollywood is full of raging drunk people who are looking at their stories and looking at their characters and trying to be characters instead of trying to become a human being. Comedians, they're supposedly funny, they're supposedly ha ha ha, and yet most of them are fairly dark and judgmental and vindictive, and they're not really, ha ha, we're trying to just kind of poke fun at you. No, you're trying to make them wrong and point at it and go, you did this wrong, you did this wrong. That's my experience of comedians. And, they have a fear that if they get well, they won't be funny anymore and they won't have a job anymore. So they don't really strive for it. But, 4 or 5 times a year you hear about another comedian or actor who drank themselves to death or blew their head off, or their spouse shot them because they were arguing over stuff. And it's just all the sort of personal stuff, all of which they then ignore while they're in front of a camera and they become somebody totally different, this made up nobody that they're playing of. So they go from their day-to-day personality, which is a result of a bunch of choices that they made and built up but really isn't them, and living as this name that really isn't them. Though a lot of actors choose another name, so not only, it's like they're being a fake person in order to get into television, but the real them, which is this made up name and personality, isn't them also, and then they play this character which isn't them. And I can imagine it's all really kind of intensely weird. And then, you're trying to have a boyfriend, a girlfriend, and raise your kids, and on and on and on. But, when this pillar of intent shifted, I've told you I had this thing where I became calm and peaceful. That actually happened a couple of years after the pillar of intent. I don't know that the second thing could have happened without the intent changing. I imagine a lot of other people don't have pillars of intent that shatter and swirl around and reappear and as a new form in areas of amber. They probably just go, I'm not going to do that anymore, I'm doing this. And then their life starts changing. It's different than a declaration. Like a lot of my declarations were, like I wanted to be a famous musician. But it wasn't really a declaration. It was more, I want to be a famous musician so people will acknowledge how great and wonderful I am, which will make up for the fact that I think I suck and I'm unloved. That's not a declaration. That's not a fundamental reshaping of how you are, your personality and story. Now, the reshaping is just another personality and story, but it's a more powerful one and fulfilling one. It's not this deeper internal you, but, having the choice of I can make movies, I can do what I want, I can be successful, as opposed to I suck, nobody wants me, nobody loves me. The second one's not as, I hesitate to use the word good, but it's a lot more painful than the movie making one. Both stories. Movie making one's a better story. Just as long as you don't get caught in believing that that story is who you are. It's just another story. There's something deeper inside. If you're a movie writer, look at your intent in life. What is it you really want? You might be able to find something outside of the 7 standard stories to write about. The great hero. Lord of the Rings. What really is the difference between Aragorn and whatever that weird eyeball's name was? Aragorn slaughtered and killed a lot of orcs. Theoretically, none of it happened. But the orcs are the bad guy, he's the good guy, so it's okay that he's slaughtering. But you're just back in this whole story that's been going on for thousands of years in the human race that, I'm the victim, I need to become the hero. Adolf Hitler and the Germans felt victimized. So they started this war to become heroes for the German race. Well, look what happened with that. That happens all the time. The United States, it happens over and over. It's Soviet Union. It's going to happen in China. Just people constantly fight, Islamic countries. I'm the one who follows Muhammad better than you. No, I'm the one who follows it better. Let's shoot at each other. It's all the same story, and it's all coming out of this pillar, this story that keeps us constantly grinding away at trying to be the perfect explanation and story that never gives us really anything. And it doesn't connect us with God or the source or whatever you want to call it. It's actually the thing that keeps you from getting that connection. Okay then, till next time.